All right, for more on this year's African Summit, we're going to bring in Abdullahi Halakhe. He's an Africa security policy analyst. Good to see you again. This year's summit, there might be more meaning. You have security issues across the board. In addition to the food security issues, what's at the top of the agenda?
I think everything is at the top of the agenda, but I think critically, two things that you mentioned there: peace and security within the region, starting with Ethiopia, as well as Somalia, South Sudan, Sudan itself, as well as food insecurity. Just to give you a sense, in the region, in the Horn of Africa, that is Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia alone, upwards of 30 million people are in need of humanitarian aid. Last year in South Central Somalia, the IPC, that is the group of experts that do determination around food insecurity, just fell short of declaring famine in Somalia. This would be another famine on top of the one that they declared in 2011, sorry. So I think food insecurity will be a big issue. And that, again, is linked to the conflict that is going on between Ukraine and Russia. Just to give you another sense, Somalia import 90% of its food from Ukraine and Russia. That makes it very susceptible to when supply chains are disrupted because of conflict. And as a result, the price of food, coupled with 5 failed successive rainfall in the region, has caused food insecurity.
So it seems obviously different countries have different issues, but the one overriding factor is the supply chain issue, which seems like every continent's dealing with it. Look, we all know China's made huge investments in Africa, and I'll just take Kenya, for example, right? They basically built a big part of the railway from the major cities into the port area to facilitate more trade. Do investments like this ultimately help get African countries into the longer goal of being sustainable? And of course, we know there are huge challenges, but you have to start somewhere in solving these.
I think that is the one element about China-Africa engagement that doesn't get a ton of attention. And a lot of it is because most of the commentary that is largely not from Africa or from China, these are the two, regions that are engaged with each other, but a third party. The commentary from a third party is about how some of these things are not working. When in reality, if you step back, Africa has got significant infrastructure gap. And what China has done is to say, look, we're not going to give you fish, we're going to give you net so that you'll be able to fish for yourself.
Right, okay, so to put it in context for our audience, when you say that things are not working between China and Africa, you're speaking of, as an example, the railway that I mentioned earlier is supposed to earn enough revenue to pay for itself, so it's still very heavily in debt. China loans the money to build a railway. China doesn't get the money back, so at this point, the country isn't happy because they're not making enough revenue. China's not happy because they're not going to get their money back. It may not be working perfectly in the short run, but you're saying in the long run, it still benefits both sides, right?
Phil, that is exactly the point. The point is, these ones, some of these large-scale infrastructure projects are not gifts. You have to pay for them. So, and sometimes these programs and projects do not work perfectly, and that is the nature of some of this investment. But in the long run, it evens out, and the railway will start alongside other projects to start making more money.
So let's lead in. Let's stay with the trade. Let's focus in on the African Continental Free Trade area. We know about free trade agreements around the world. Sometimes they work out. Sometimes it just causes a lot of fighting in the family. How is this one going to work out well for Africa?
I think the potential is there. There's no doubt, and everything has its potential. But I think the hard work of making it work is where a lot of work needs to be done. The biggest challenge on the continent now, among many others, is the intra-African trade. As it is now, Africa is largely fairly fragmented when it comes to trading amongst itself because of lack of infrastructure, because of a tremendous amount of non-tariff barriers when it comes to trading amongst each other. So as a result, that makes it very difficult. So the Africa Free Trade is going to be a game changer. That again is in theory, but it needs a ton of investment to make it work.
Very good. Very quickly, Hector says I got 30 seconds, so I want to ask about this Agenda 2063 and the blueprint. Tell us what this is about and how this is going to work.
This is largely, taking Africa to the next level, not depending on, donors for some of its program. So it's largely African taking, real ownership in terms of putting their money where their mouths are to really take Africa to the next level. But again, the devil is in the details, Phil.
Abdullahi, always good to see you, my friend. Thank you very much for those insights.
My pleasure, Phil. Take care.